I don't know. I think I should name this episode Changing Times, just considering whatever the hell it is that I'm talking about. But at the same time, I could call it Lasting Times because, some things should last, some things shouldn't last, and some things just should be changed entirely. But I guess then again, instead of dealing with that and, the sort of sexual innuendo that it comes with, I could just say that it's about the times. Some are changing, some are coming up, and some should definitely go down. But then again, after saying all of this, have I really said anything that the episode's about? Because there's some culture, there's a bit of dating in there, but there's someone who's talking about fucking a little bit too wildly that I need to discuss. But all in all, I will get to all of that in a bit. But before I can do any of that, we need to start from the first thing that talks about time. And it's coming from China. So there's a Chinese company that recently developed a battery that can run, forget this, 50 years. 50 bloody years. Like, I'm trying to think about how I could get something to run for 50 years. I myself haven't run for 50 years. Like, most of that time has been spent doing a bunch of other things like sleeping, talking to women, working, trying to make money, and a bunch of other things that aren't entirely selfish, like, watching Teletubbies and shit. But you're telling me that there's a battery that can supposedly run longer than I've been alive to do any of that shit? For what, though?
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Like, I'm trying to think of all the things that you could possibly do with a battery for that long. And honestly, besides keeping the global economy going, I don't see fuck all that you could want to do with a battery for 50 years. But anyways, let me just read the story that came with this entire thing. So it says, and I quote, "A Chinese company, Betavolt Technology, claims to have created the BV100, a nuclear-powered battery smaller than a coin that can reportedly outlast the devices it powers, providing continuous power for 50 years without requiring recharging. Utilizing energy from nuclear isotopes, the prototype battery employs semiconductors to convert the released energy into electrical power, potentially allowing devices such as smartphones to operate endlessly without the need for recharging, or drones to fly continuously without landing, as stated on the company's website." End quote. Okay, so I'm trying to think about all the ways that this could possibly be beneficial, and besides maybe being stuck in the wilderness, there's really not that much that's that great about having a battery that can run for 50 years. Because you think about it, like, imagine you who has not wanted to listen to your boss talk to you, or you don't pick your boss's phone calls and shit, and normally you say that you left your phone charging or your phone didn't have charge and shit, and yet you've actually blocked your boss for the weekend. Now you won't be able to do that shit. You think about it, the people that like to ignore their partners, whether it's to cheat, whether it's just because their partners are annoying, they can't use the whole phrase of, my phone is dying, let me talk to you tomorrow. Or, my phone was dead, that's why you couldn't find me over the weekend. Like, you think about it. All of those reasons would go out the window if you have a battery that lasts 50 years. And the worst part about it is, like, there's women that don't use sex toys or don't really rely on sex toys because they know very well that if they got a sex toy, the one thing that would cancel out whatever good love-making sensation they'd have as they're giving it to themselves is the fact that the battery would die, all right? And the fact that, they can control everything but the battery running out. But now imagine if it's there for 50 years. They would marry the fuck out of these things. Like, us niggas would never have a chance, not unless if we knew how to compete with a motorized sex toy and actually win, which for the most part is practically impossible. But then again, if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, then you'd know that in this case, you don't have to beat them, you just have to join them. Of which, speaking of joining, I should have started things off with the instrumental joined in a little bit earlier, but who says I can't do it right now? So, welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who likes things short and sweet, and guess what? He's still in charge. He's a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. This episode just highlighted how some of us might end up actually losing to motors. Like, you think about it. Imagine you losing the person that you really wanted to be with, or losing a chance at being with someone that you'd want to be with just because of a sex toy. Although when I kind of think about it, that's more of a problem for the women as opposed to the guys, because when you kind of think about it, like, it's guys that are more comfortable with the idea of just looks and good pussy. But with women, it's not like looks and good dick will be enough. Like, it's not like the sex toy will pay the bills. It's not like the sex toy will be protective of her or anything. So not unless if she gets a robot, then powers it with that battery, then it could probably work. Of which, if that's the case, like, I don't think the robots will last as long as the battery either way, because, like, girl math in and of itself is not logical, and these things will just run hot and just malfunction trying to process that shit. So I don't know. Either way, I guess we're all stuck with each other, which is good news, so we should be happy about that. And I should probably move away from robots because, you know, we are humans and this relationship thing doesn't involve robots, and move things on to the main topic. But before I can get to any of that, I first need to talk about something for a little bit. Now, there was a video that was sent to me on WhatsApp sometime towards the end of last week, and honestly, I don't know what to feel about it. Now, it's regarding a 22-year-old Gen Z socialite, and I'm just gonna play the clip for you because there were some things that she said, and I can get into my thoughts on the entire thing because damn, there's definitely some things that I feel need to be said about this entire thing. So without further ado,
guys, mimi hata Nigeria wanajua. Guy, anyone knows. Mimi kama ufiki bei. Mimi na rent yangu ni 35k. So kama you should give me more than my rent. Yani mimi lazima unipatie more than rent yangu. Siwezi kupatia kama ufiki bei. Nikupatie ndo ni follow mimi. Sitaki kufollow your car. Ati ndo ni hangout Gemini. Muone na hangout na kina Butros, ati na hangout na ma celebrity na sezo nimependa. Jameni.
Okay, so those were the words of the 22-year-old Gen Z socialite known as Nick Njenga, of which up until this video was sent, I never knew who the fuck she was. And she was pretty much saying, for those of y'all that didn't understand the language she was using, that not unless if you're up to her level, and by her level it means being able to pay her rent, then she won't screw you. Now, she has also stated that her rent is 35 grand, and you know, this grand is Kenyan grand, so you know, 35,000 Kenyan. And yeah, she said, I think almost verbatim, that if you cannot give her money that is worth her rent or more, then she has no business giving you pussy. And you know, she also referenced the fact that she chills with like celebrities at like the club and shit, and she can't do that if, you know, she's giving pussy for free. And look, here's the thing, like, I know that her charging 35k to give pussy isn't like the highest number we've heard of or anything. It's just like, I'm finding it a little bit hard to kind of fathom all of this, because how the hell is it that we got to a level where people, like young women, are pretty much going out there and telling the whole fucking internet that they are selling pussy for 35,000 bob? Like, I'm finding it a little bit hard to think this through, because even 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that such a thing would be possible. If you spoke to 5 years ago Denver, this is like what, early 2019 type Denver, and you said, Denver, there's going to be, you know, in 5 years, there's going to be women online. There's going to be a woman online who will pretty much be recording a video saying that she will not get with any guy who is not willing to give her at least 35 grand, which is her rent, just to fuck her. You know, if someone told early 2019 Denver that that was something that was coming up, I would be like, you know what, that's bullshit. And maybe later 2019 Denver would be like, if that was even nearly as possible, it would probably be like maybe a sex scene via OnlyFans. You know, like it would be virtual, not like full-on live pussy and shit like that. And that's something that you'd find out if you went and you subscribed to her OnlyFans and shit. But you're telling me that in like real life there's someone who's actually doing this? Like, I'm finding it hard to actually wrap my head around it, because I don't even get how we actually got to this point where there's young babes that are straight up just saying, you know what, if you want to fuck me, give me this much money. And don't get me wrong, it's not like people haven't been doing this for years. Like, hoes have existed since time immemorial. It's just that I'm trying to think it through. Like, back in the day, even when the socialites were, busy selling pussy for fame and for like money and shit, like they used to do that shit super low key. Like, even when you dial it back 10 years ago, like when socialites were becoming socialites, they weren't being as open about how much it would cost to fuck them. Like, you'd have to go and like full on express interest and like really, really put in the work to find that out. But you're telling me that there's a shorty who's, some version of a socialite. I didn't know of her and I'm 27 years old. So like, how known is she really? And she's flat out saying 35k for the pussy? Like, how the hell did we get to this point? I'm actually finding this very, very hard to wrap my head around. Because on one end, like, I'm finding it not necessarily as shocking, but it's more of just being full on disappointed. Because on one end, we've degraded as a society to the point where young girls can actually do this online. And, they are perfectly comfortable putting up such information online without any thought of the repercussions that it might have. And even worse still than that, we're looking at a bunch of this shit, and not only are we looking at it as, maybe it's clout, but we're not even flinching all that hard about such a thing. Like, I don't know. Either way, I still find it very, very disappointing that we've gotten to this point. I don't care if it's for clout, I don't care if it's real. Like, the mere fact that a grown adult, more so, yes, she's a young woman and all, but like, someone is going online onto the internet where shit does not disappear and is just flat out saying, hey, if you want to buy pussy, like it's worth this much, and she's comfortable with it, I think is something that should definitely make us question how far down we've gone as a people. Like, no matter how low down a bunch of us could have been back in the day, like most of us exercise some level of controls, and even those controls held back some of the wilder people. But then again, maybe it's just a me thing. Maybe I'm just acting like a nosy parent or some shit. Either way, I'm going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, unlike other episodes where I usually get a lot of my content online, like this one actually came from a discussion that I was having over the weekend with a colleague of mine at work. Now, me and her were just talking about a bunch of random shit, like mating behaviors, like dating, practices for different people here and there. And at some point, we actually ended up on the whole discussion of Nigerian men and, the fact that they seem to attract women and they seem to have women who like really, really want to be with them. And they're liked by quite a lot of women. At least the good ones that are the more upstanding types that, have a good solid job or are doing something particularly solid with their lives. And, it's not like they're trying to scam anyone or like wreck someone's life or beat people up. So when us guys were busy talking about it, one of the things that we kind of noted, and yeah, before I go any further, Caro, if you're hearing this, mad shoutouts to you. Thank you for this. When we were busy talking about the whole like Nigerians and what makes Nigerians so attractive to quite a number of women, we kind of started to notice that there's a bit of a pattern for Nigerians. So like there's sort of a dating culture that they have whereby they will pamper the woman that they're with. And it kind of took me back to a conversation that I had back in 2017. And I was having it with a couple of women in the hostel, and they were busy talking about how great Nigerian guys are. Or, they get them gifts, they pamper them, and they always buy them these expensive gifts because they want their favor. And it kind of started to form a bit of a pattern, because when I was talking with my colleague at work, she mentioned the whole being pampered and being bought for stuff, being treated out to different experiences and all. And what these women had spoken about, like almost 6-7 years ago, like was sort of similar. It did kind of show that, for a lot of Nigerian men, it's sort of like a part of that dating culture in Nigeria to, go and pamper their women, go and treat them nice in terms of gifting them as a way to gain their favor and to show their affection. And even for the stingy ones that may not be the type to blow a bunch of money on them, they'll still want to show their affection through getting their partner gifts. And that kind of actually started to stand out quite well. Because whether you say the dick is good or not, whether you say the language is good or not, whether you say the compliments are great or not, one of the things that you'll notice almost as a common factor for a lot of these Nigerian guys, at least, I guess maybe the Nigerian born ones, is the fact that they believe in earning the favor through stuff like gifting. And, sometimes monetary gifts will be given, but a lot of times just general gifts are going to be given. So it seemed like it was almost like a thing for people of that country to actually do that as a way to attract a partner. And it had sort of become a thing for them. It was almost like a brand. And regardless of whether they're broke or not, they'll still do that. So it kind of did sort of become this whole mark of a Nigerian man will treat you a certain way. And, regardless of whether they cheat, regardless of whether they don't, if they do care about you, that's definitely something they're doing. But as that point was being concluded, now the whole question of what exactly Kenyans do kind of came into focus for a little bit. And for the first time in a while, I was actually a little bit, speechless, because I didn't really know how to explain it. Because if someone was to ask what kind of dating culture is in Kenya, or, let me even just say Nairobi, it would be hard to explain because different people are doing it differently. There's a couple of guys that'll take a babe out on a date. There's a couple of guys that'll say they're taking a babe out on a date and take them to the club. There's a couple of guys that claim they want to take a babe out on a date, but they'll take them for like a football match or some shit. And, there's guys that don't even try to take you out on a date. They tell you to come over to their place. Guys that don't believe in dates. They simply believe in Netflix and chill. So, like, from the high that they've gotten from the babe, it's like they're automatically trying to get into the sheets with them. So, it's a little bit hard to pinpoint what exactly is our dating culture. Do we do gifts? Do we do acts of service? Do we do some form of mating ritual of sorts, like some animals? Minus getting drinks and shagging, like, are there any other common things that you find with a lot of guys whenever they're trying to appeal to the women in Nairobi or in Kenya in general? So, like, that was a little bit of an interesting thing for me for a bit, because even flashback to when I was having that discussion where the Nigerian men were busy being spoken of in such high regard, I was actually asked then about what exactly do Kenyan guys do for their women, and I didn't know how to answer it at the time. Now, that was 2017, and I could say that it's justifiable then. I was pretty young, I was 21 years old, I didn't really have this whole outlook on relationships. So me not knowing then made a lot more sense. And, the answer that I gave was, like, us guys just do the standard. You take a babe out on a date and, you just try and court her and you keep the conversation going. And at some point, hopefully stuff works out. And boring as it sounded, that was the best that I could come up with at the time. And for an answer back then, that was pretty okay. It's not like I needed to know more. It's not like I was really into knowing that much more. But today that's not entirely satisfactory. I probably should know more, but then again, it's not like I'm without any idea of what our dating culture might be, because it's not like I haven't observed how a lot of people have been going out, how a lot of people give feedback on the kind of dates they've had and the experiences that they have with different people. And it's not like I don't know how people get into relationships and people try, and how people have been trying to get into relationships over these past couple of years. So if I was to try and summarize it and try and give some idea of our dating culture, I'd probably summarize it in just 2 words, which is minimized risk. Like, you kind of think about it, for a lot of people that are dating today, it's literally all about minimizing the amount of risk. Now, granted, there's a lot of women that are like, we should go back to the good old days of a man, like, asking to take a woman out on a date and, like, having pride in courting a woman, blah, 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 not whatever the hell's happening today. And, you could be right, but you could also argue that that was a more American dating culture or a more Western dating culture as opposed to a Kenyan one. And at that point, the rebuttal would probably be, who says we haven't learned from them and integrated it into our current social culture today? And you'd probably be right. It's just that if you're looking at where we're at right now, that's not the normal for a lot of people. There's not that many people that are getting into relationships like that. There's not that many people that are trying to date like that. And it's a very interesting mix, because when you look at how a lot of people are trying to minimize risk, there's women that are busy trying to minimize risk in terms of reducing the number of low quality partners they have by making sure that they go on multiple dates. And, they'll probably cap it at like maybe 3, 4, or 5, but now they'll also want to throw in their own spin on things and be like, let's not just go to some place and eat, let's do something different. And the guy's expected to come up with some idea of something different. Or, probably they can come up with it together. But at the same time, there's a guy that's busy trying to minimize risk because he doesn't want to fund a bunch of women's, dinner plans, because, there's a lot of women that are going out on dates just for the food or just for the experience. And they're saying, let her come to my place and, I'll feed her from my house. I can cook. I'm not a bad cook. I can make something for her. Or, there's a guy that's like, I'm not trying to go the long haul with this shorty. I just want to lay pipe. So let me just have her come to my place. While there's another woman who's like, I don't know if I want to have a good long lasting relationship with this person, or at least a long lasting one, or something short. But I also don't want to just give it up so easily. So, I'll see if I can find something in the middle in the name of, let's go for a couple of social things here and there together, whether it's going to the club, whether it's going for a road trip, whether it's going for some friend's event, or whether it's just doing some event. Let's do a bunch of those things together before I can decide whether I'm actually going to do the whole let me come to your place and then we'll see where it goes kind of thing. And for some of them, it's very based on, like, do I like this person's vibes or not? But still, at the end of the day, it's all coming down to the minimizing of risk. Because guys don't want to take a risk, or at least guys don't want to take as much of a risk. So they'd much rather go for the easiest ones, or at least the easiest chances they can get. And girls don't want to take a risk because they don't want to make the cheap call and end up with low quality guys. The problem is, it's not like we're all avoiding the same batches of people and ending with the kind of people that we want all the time. There's a guy that's trying to bang a babe by the first date and, continue having easy pussy after that, but he's also trying to make her a little bit of a wife, and maybe she's not about that life. And at the same time, there's a babe that is trying to do like 3, 4, 5 dates with a guy, but this guy is going to do those dates, going to lay pipe. But even as you felt that, probably there's something solid for you guys going, dude is probably doing that with like 2, 3 other women. So at the end of the day, you think you're trying to minimize risk, but at the end of the day, you're just ending up with a problem that is finding you a little bit later on. And, at the end of the day, it's not like the date was supposed to, give you the ironclad plan for getting the most high quality person, the best person for you, your next potential soulmate or some shit like that. Nah, it was to help you in selecting someone that's good for you. But even then, the dating in and of itself isn't foolproof, and it's not built to, completely ensure that you find the right person for you. So maybe we're going to continue stumbling, but I honestly don't know if the whole minimizing risk thing that we've been doing is going to help us anymore. Granted, besides, just saying that our dating culture is minimizing risk, I don't really know what it is that we do as a people, to be honest. I don't know if we really have some sort of a dating culture. Different people in different places have different dating cultures, but we as Kenyans, we as Nairobians, the way we do it, it's wild. It's like people aren't even trying anymore, or some people are just trying a little too hard, and it's all in the wrong direction. Either way, to kind of conclude all of this, let me just say, maybe we need to find our own dating culture, and maybe then we can actually kill the expectations that some people might have, or at the very least, we can kind of separate a good chunk of the very, very bad performers or the low quality potential partners that we have in favor for a much better quality, much higher status, much higher version of the kind of people that we'd want to be with. Although then again, considering that I don't normally do episodes like this where, I'm sort of still in thought, it's not completely materialized, I would definitely like your thoughts on this. Like, it's not even about me being right or wrong. I definitely need your thoughts because I don't know what kind of dating culture we have, or if we do have a dating culture of some sorts. So I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. And on X, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.